Referencing from Article Amos, Section 3, Subsection 3. Can two work together except they agree? Hi, I'm Temilayo Kush, and I will be talking to you about the interconnectedness of spiritual laws, Part 4. Join me. So today we'll be talking about the interconnectedness of spiritual laws. We have had a long, I won't say long, but it's almost like a long series. We started from the introduction, went to part 1, we went to part 2, we went to part 3, and now we are at part 4, which is the last. Although there may be a revisiting of this series probably later in the nearest future, I would actually communicate that when that is about to happen. Let's dive into the subject of today, the interconnectedness of spiritual laws. And we will be talking about two laws today, the law of correspondence and the law of spiritual contact. The law of correspondence states that our internal environment will always mirror our external environment, just like the physical world reflects the spiritual world. Let me give a good example. So there was this opinion at some time, I'm trying to recall how it was put, but I'll just paraphrase, where a lot of people didn't really understand that health was actually wealth. They wouldn't mind putting in more hours to work, and they wouldn't rest. They would put more hours. They thought that, by putting in more hours and putting in more effort, they were actually going to get more money. But then out of that came the hustle culture and all of that kind of thing, where people don't understand the balance between working and resting, and they don't understand that even resting helps you to work better, right? The thoughts that people had at that moment about work, about wealth, about money was that they didn't see health as an advantage. So many people would work and stretch themselves only to discover that when they have money, they can't even enjoy some of the things they labored for. You have seen people die. You have seen people who have spent a lot trying to make money. At the end of the day, they actually didn't enjoy the benefits of what they had built over the years. Our internal environment, which are our thoughts, our beliefs, and everything we hold on to, ideas, opinions we hold on to, will eventually bring out, you would see a correspondence of that, an agreement of that in our physical world, in our outer world, in our conditions. So yes, there are situations where your environment, you couldn't control some of the outcomes, but there are certain things you can control. You can control your thoughts, you can control your beliefs, you can control your actions. So, and all this will give birth to whatever will happen on your outside. It may take a while before you see the effect, but it will eventually come out well. There are so many examples I would like to give, but I'm sure we all can make reference to different things in our lives where we took decisions, we did some things that changed our lives for the better, but it was as a result of a thought we held on to. It was as a result of our internal environment. So moving to the next one, which is the law of spiritual contact. Now, the law of spiritual contact states that for the spiritual world, or for the spirit world to be contacted, there must be an establishment of a point of contact between a physical entity and a spiritual entity. So I'm sure we can recall many of these movies that we watch where they have like a priest. People go to meet a priest or herbalist or native doctor, and then the native doctor, when the people get to the native doctor's place, they begin to make some chants and begin to say some things, and then all of a sudden it's like deity they are trying to communicate to communicates back, and he tells them whatever they need to tell whoever is going to seek for a solution or something. So that's just how it is. So that scene, if you imagine it, is just a typical example. There are so many, but typical example of spiritual contact. So there has to be a point of contact between the physical entity, a human being, most importantly, primarily, and a spirit, both making contact. But that contact must be established. So the contact could be through a medium. It could be through your words, it could be through your action. Of course, it's your words. Your words are part of the ingredient to make that contact. Just like when you want to make a phone call, you dial up from your own end. So you want to reach out to someone, you dial up the person's number and you're trying to call the person, and then the person responds to your call. So you make contact with that person. But now the contact has to be with an intention. His physical and spiritual entity are not just making contact. They are making contact because there's an intention, there's a goal, there's a plan, there's an aim, something they want to achieve. So if you want to make spiritual contact, with any spirit, you have to establish a point of contact. You have to have an intention. You cannot just wake up one day and say, oh, I want to interact with the spiritual world. Let me know. It doesn't happen like that. The spiritual world is well organized, both from the side of God and from the side of darkness. They are well organized, very well organized with order. No matter how disjointed some of all these things that happen in the spirit world may look like, very well organized, and even they follow protocol, because they are agencies that ensure that every law has to be kept to. Not like us here that we break laws and all of that. The intersection between the two laws is that both of them agree on the connection between the spiritual and the physical, the unseen and the seen. Both of them. There are so many. There are other things. There are other intersections, but primary intersection between the law of correspondence and the law of spiritual contact is that they both agree. They both include the connection between the spiritual world and the physical world, the unseen and the seen, right? So the goal of all this I would say 4-part series, or maybe 5 parts plus the introduction, is to bring people an awareness that spiritual laws are interconnected. There are so many spiritual laws. In fact, if we really had to do an assessment, we will figure out that just by head count alone, we already have over 150 spiritual laws. In fact, there are so many. We may not be able to give description to some, and some even have different names and different forms. Like, for instance, the law of seed and harvest is also similar to the law of cause and effect. So, but they are similar, but they are a bit different from themselves and how they operate and how they function and their dynamics. So the goal of this series is that people should be aware that spiritual laws exist, whether you agree to it or not. They are interconnected, and most importantly, you must engage them. If you are not engaging them, someone else is doing it on your behalf, either to your advantage or to your disadvantage. And trust me, you don't want to be at a disadvantage in this life. You don't want to be. Remember, spiritual laws are powerful. They superimpose on this physical reality or physical world we see. You must engage them, you must be conscious of them, and most importantly, you must live in correspondence with them and other laws. Hi, I'm Temilayo Kush. I remain a student of life and a speaker of thoughts. I'd like to leave you with my favorite quote that I always quote every time, which is from article Proverbs, section 24, subsection 3, which says that by wisdom is a house built, and by understanding is established, and the house is always filled in goodies. Stay blessed and remain growing. I wish you all the best. Thank you so much.